And welcome to Hannity tonight. A whole lot of brand new breaking news. All eyes tonight also on Robert Mueller, day 568 of the witch hunt. And just to recap, zero Trump-Russia collusion has been discovered. None. We do, however, tonight have new evidence that two top Democratic operatives could be in very serious trouble over their shady international dealings. We're going to bring you that report. Also, a huge blockbuster breaking story from the Hill's John Solomon, who has damning new information on the world's seediest charity. And there's evidence, the Clinton Foundation. And tonight we'll show you the latest controversy swirling around Democrat Kamala Harris. And we'll reveal the dire consequences from one company's war on the Second Amendment. And stay tuned, we have a mini monologue tonight on what is the media in this country's disgusting new low, if you can believe it. But first, sit tight, buckle up. It's time for a lot of breaking news. It'll take the full hour. Opening monologue. All right, tonight we are still awaiting Robert Mueller's next move. Two reports are expected before the end of the week, including new information on the special counsel's coordination with Michael Cohen, and as well as findings from the never-ending saga surrounding Paul Manafort. Oh, yeah, nothing to do with Russia. Neither case has anything to do with collusion. And on Tuesday, Mueller released its report on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. That memo also providing zero evidence of collusion, a process crime. But leave it to fake news CNN to put facts last and immediately speculate that the Flynn memo was the beginning of the end for the president. Lies they've been telling us for 2 years. They just keep recirculating the same lies. Take a look.
The redacted document, if we can put it up, people on Twitter were literally speculating that part of this blacked out part, it matched the number of characters in the words President Donald J. Trump. That's the extent to which people are going here. You can see it there to try to figure out what's there.
For nearly 2 years, Robert Mueller and his merry band of Democratic donors, they have provided ample fuel for everyone who wants to destroy the administration, delegitimize a duly elected president. Now, today, the president made this astute evaluation, writing, quote, without the phony Russia witch hunt and with all that we have accomplished in the last almost 2 years, tax cuts, regulation cuts, judges, military vets, my approval rating would be at 75% rather than 50%, just reported by Rasmussen. It's called presidential harassment. And when Robert Mueller wraps up his investigation, he shouldn't have any trouble getting a job at the DNC. He's already raised millions of dollars for Democrats, worked overtime, full-time to destroy President Trump, and he has so many connections after all, he has staffed his entire probe with big-time Democratic donors, and even former Hillary Clinton lawyer over at the Clinton Foundation. But as the hunt continues, well, we can report good news to you tonight. A few on the left are actually finally being held accountable. Tomorrow, James Comey, he will now testify under oath in front of the House Judiciary Committee, and he will have a lot to answer for. And much of it surrounds Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. After all, remember, Comey, McCabe, Strzok, all previously stated Flynn did not appear to them to be lying. And now Flynn ultimately pled guilty to that charge, which stemmed from our federal government illegally what? We had surveillance, unmasking, no minimization, and then, of course, leaking raw intelligence on Flynn's international communications. So what did Comey know about that illegal unmasking and leaking raw intelligence? While Comey prepares for the hot seat, two other anti-Trump operatives are in hot water tonight. The AP is reporting that Democratic lobbyist Tony Podesta, the brother of Clinton campaign chair John Podesta, along with Obama's former White House counsel Greg Craig, they are now the subjects of a federal investigation into their lobbying efforts for the pro-Russia government of Ukraine. No criminal charges yet filed, but the investigation is reportedly ramping up as we speak tonight. And also breaking tonight, a damning new report from John Solomon at The Hill, revealing shocking details about the investigation into the Clinton Foundation. According to Solomon, he'll join us in a few minutes, a 2017, a whistleblower submitted thousands and thousands of pages of evidence revealing shocking allegations, including, quote, serious concerns about legal compliance, improper, literally commingling of personal and charity business, and, quote, quid pro quo promises made to donors while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And it is important to note that the Clinton Foundation raised a whopping $62.9 million in 2016 when a Clinton presidency looked inevitable. The very next year, after a shocking defeat, well, the foundation only managed to raise a paltry, well, $26 million. Now, that is a very suspicious trend, given clear pay for play accusations surrounding the Clinton Foundation. Now, a spokesperson from the foundation did get back to us and tell us that it is one of the most heavily scrutinized charitable organizations in the world and is continually subjected to politically motivated allegations, and the foundation's CFO is denying any inappropriate or illegal activities. Well, we'll see. And by the way, Solomon has been very busy this week. Last night, right here on this program, well, we showed you another breaking report from the Hill exposing serious FISA abuse at the highest level of James Comey's FBI and Obama's DOJ. And according to this report, the new evidence in the form of a huge email chain finally discovered after 2 years, revealing that, quote, the FBI was aware before they secured their first warrant, infamous FISA warrant on Carter Page, that in fact there were intelligence community concerns about the veracity, the reliability of the main evidence, the bulk of evidence that went into the FISA application. In other words, the Clinton bought and paid for Christopher Steele dossier with Russian lies. Now, this smoking gun evidence that high-level FBI officials willfully committed a fraud multiple times on FISA court judges to obtain and secure a warrant on this Trump campaign associate, Carter Page. They never told the FISA judge that the dossier was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton, a massive omission, or that its contents were never corroborated or never verified, and that our own intelligence community had doubts. And yet, because of that phony dossier, an American citizen for a year was spied on by our federal government. A grave miscarriage of justice. John Solomon will have more in just a minute. But first, we're only weeks out of the midterms, and already, believe it or not, the 2020 election is starting to heat up. Democrats have an extremely long and extremely weak field of candidates likely running to challenge President Trump. And tonight, one of the top contenders, far-left zealot, Kamala Harris, is cutting ties with a top aide embroiled in what is a massive harassment scandal. She accepted his resignation today after the Sacramento Bee reported the details of a 2016 $400,000 suit, and Harris is claiming she had no prior knowledge of this massive legal filing. We'll find out over time. Now, Senator Harris will reportedly decide over the holidays whether or not she wants to challenge President Trump in 2020. And of course, Harris and other top liberals will make gun ownership a big issue for 2020. Make no mistake, they do not believe in the Second Amendment the way a lot of Americans do. But Democrats should, well, probably take note of what happened to Dick's Sporting Goods. Earlier this year, remember, Dick's Sporting Goods took a political stance against the Second Amendment. They actually hired a gun control lobbyist, refused to sell guns to law-abiding citizens under the age of 21. They stopped selling AR-style long rifles. Well, now the chain sales have dropped nearly 4%, and its outdoor-focused Field and Stream stores may soon be closing their doors. Now, sadly, what Dick's and most of the Democrats often take for granted, the Second Amendment matters to the American people. That's why it is, number 2. Now, it's an ever-present check on the threats of foreign, domestic, and also, it's more than that, to own a gun. It's the right to defend yourself and your family, self-preservation, a protection of all our inalienable rights as Americans. And we live in a dangerous and more violent world every day. All right, joining us now on more breaking news, on top of his report yesterday about the Clinton Foundation, is the Hill's John Solomon. This article means to me that if all that evidence, 6,000 pages, is that total?
That's right, 6,000 pages, 95 exhibits.
95 exhibits. Okay, so now the question is, why don't we go through what they found and why we are here and why they have not been under more fire?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's interesting who they are, who made this complaint. These are former experts for the Drug Enforcement Agency, for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Connecticut, for major compliance, for major Wall Street firms. These are people that live and breathe tax law and good governance, and they put together this complaint. They assembled a lot of internal documents from the Clinton Foundation, perhaps most importantly, 2 legal reviews that the Clinton Foundation did on itself. And what they found is that the Clinton Foundation itself, its own lawyers, warned that there was a strong possibility that donors were being made promises of quid pro quo favors from Secretary Clinton when she was in the Obama administration in return for gifts to the foundation. They warned that there was a culture of non-compliance, not wanting to comply with the law, with the rules that the foundation had to follow. They said that Bill Clinton's personal interest in his commingling of his personal business with the foundation posed a grave threat to the foundation itself. These are not Republicans. These are not partisans saying it. These are internal documents of lawyers hired by the Clinton Foundation to find out what was going on wrong in the foundation. This is what they found. So these investigators assemble all this evidence. They then go and they interview the current CFO, the longtime CFO of the Clinton Foundation, a guy named Andy Kessel. And they do this in November 16, and they take him out to dinner or lunch in New York, and they begin asking him, hey, are there problems here? And according to their memo, their interview memo after they met with him, Kessel makes several spontaneous claims that he can't control Bill Clinton, that people have been trying to stop him from commingling personal business with the foundation, but nobody can control him. And he makes the most provocative of statements, allegedly, if you believe this memo, in which he says, I know where all the bodies are buried at the Clinton Foundation. So they assemble all this evidence. They give it to the IRS in August 16. They give it to the Maine Justice Department of Donald Trump's Justice Department in October 2017. And then in early 2018, they're called by the FBI in Little Rock, and they provide the evidence to the FBI in Little Rock, which means the Maine apparatus, the IRS, and the FBI and the Justice Department now have access to all of these allegations of wrongdoing.
What is happening? I mean, look, John, you were talking about 6,000 pages, 95 exhibits, a 48-page submission. And the evidence, as I read in your article, seems overwhelming and incontrovertible here. How has it been sitting for a year, especially in light of we already know the issue of Hillary's violation of the Espionage Act by having that mom and pop shop server? We had top secret, classified information on it. That's a violation of the Espionage Act, obstructing justice as it relates to how she deleted emails, washed her hard drive clean, and had devices broken up. They seem to skate every time. You're describing literally systematic violations of every charitable contribution law imaginable here, including IRS violations. They're sitting on that for a year? Who's looking into it?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think we're going to get a very important answer. I want to put a special date on your calendar. Next Thursday, Mark Meadows, Chairman Mark Meadows, the House Subcommittee on the House Oversight Committee, is going to have a hearing. These two were John Huber, the special U.S. attorney who President Clinton's former Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, named a year ago. What have you done? How much money have you spent? Bob Mueller spent tens of millions of dollars. What have you done to look at these allegations? And we may get our first answer in public to what the Justice Department has done. Now, we have some hints in my story. We know that the FBI not only had contact with these whistleblowers, but I am able to confirm from Clinton Foundation sources that Kessel, the CFO, the guy who ran the finances, was interviewed by the FBI in 2017. We know that Doug Campbell, the undercover informant for the in the Russian nuclear, he was interviewed by the same Little Rock FBI. Yeah, Uranium One informant. So we do see some activity, and if I had to guess from my reporting, if there is action going on, it's centered in Little Rock, Arkansas. But for the first time, Congress is going to put the Trump Justice Department's own officials, their feet to the fire, and we're going to get an answer. Have you done anything? How much have you spent on this? Is there illegality, or should we drop this line of inquiry with the Clinton Foundation? Next Thursday could be the day we get our answer.
The people that you've spoken to on the legal side, do they see laws violated?
They do. And so I sent this to a half dozen former FBI, IRS experts who focused in charity fraud and financial fraud. And all of them said to a T, if this walked into my door, it would give me a predicate for opening a criminal investigation of the Clinton Foundation and perhaps individuals inside of it. Every one of them said that. I think one of them, Jeff Danik, very well-known, decorated FBI agent, made some of the most complex financial fraud cases in the history of the Bureau, said, I would open up on this in a second based on what these good investigators put together in this private document.
Back-to-back huge bombshells by John Solomon. We're going to have you back tomorrow and the rest of the week into next week to get into this more deeply. John, thank you.
Sean.
All right, joining us with more reaction, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes is with us. First, do you have any reaction to what you just heard from John Solomon? And then I want to go to his big breaking report from yesterday.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, Sean. I mean, we have actively been looking into the Clinton Foundation, Uranium One. If you may remember that we assigned a task force leader, Peter King from New York, to look into this. So we have seen some troubling information on this, and I can't verify John's reporting. He always does a good job. He has great sources, and I'm sure there's much more to be learned on it.
Let me go back to his breaking news yesterday. What we discovered, apparently, and I don't know how this was not known when we go back 2 years now, pretty much investigating this whole issue, the Clinton bought and paid for phony dossier, et cetera. What we now have found out, there is an email chain or a chain of emails. James Comey is on it, top DOJ officials are on it, and they knew, and the Intel community had massive questions about the veracity, the truthfulness, the validity of the dossier, which your memo and the Grassley-Graham memo point to as the bulk of the applications for the FISA warrant against Carter Page. When did you first find out about this email chain?
Well, I don't know that the email chain in John's reporting is the same stuff that we're looking at, although it sounds very similar. What we have been saying, and this is when as high as the Speaker of the House, we have been requesting for many months now, and I actually talked about it on your show a couple weeks ago, that there are emails where there are redactions that we are quite convinced that if that is unredacted and provided to the House of Representatives, to the Intelligence Committee, it will be very clear that there is very much, it was very well known that there was a lot of information that was not provided to the FISA court leading up to the warrant on Carter Page. So I don't know exactly who John's sources are, but I do know that we have been trying to get these redactions from emails without looking. It's possible that we are talking about the same types of emails. It's also possible, Sean, that there's even more emails that we don't even know about. But what we are aware of, what I call the fourth bucket of information, it would be very clear that there were people within the FBI and DOJ that knew well and good before they went to the FISA court that Christopher Steele and others were up to some really bad and nefarious activity.
You're saying that these emails would be the fourth bucket, the 302s would be a second bucket, the FISA application themselves, especially the last one, pages 10 through 12, 17 to 34, then the Gang of Eight information, those would be the four buckets. What John is saying here...
That's correct. And those first three, remember, Sean, in those first three, the president has actually called to have declassified.
But he's holding it back, he now recently said.
Is this fourth bucket.
Okay, so what I want to ask you is, if they knew, and if the Intelligence Committee knew that they were questionable, that the whole dossier was questionable, and it was the bulk of the FISA applications, and they used it anyway. We know that they omitted that Hillary bought and paid for it with a footnote that said it might have a political taint to it, but they didn't say it was the opposition party candidate. Is it possible that they knew it was not true, that they gave it to the FISA court anyway, that they didn't do their due diligence, verify and corroborate it, and that they totally and completely committed fraud on the FISA court, not once but four separate times, meaning anybody that signed off on it was signing off on an application to spy on an American with evidence that they, at best, thought could very likely not be true?
Yeah, so remember what we've been looking at criminally has been abuse of power, whether or not there was a conspiracy to abuse power. You know about that. You've talked about that for a long time. What this gets into is this would be the first clear evidence that we have on another major crime, which would be called lying to a federal judge, which is a crime and a major crime. So that is really at the heart
but the
of
people
this.
we're talking about would be Comey.
It is the evidence that we have.
This would be Comey signing off on it. Rod Rosenstein signing off on the last one. That would be Sally Yates signing off on it, right?
Well, they're the ones that signed off on it, but they're not necessarily the ones who would have provided and doctored the information. So really the people that are culpable here are the ones who were in these discussions that knew about the information that was not provided to the court.
Even though Adam Schiff, who I have a lot of issues with, will be the chairman of the committee come January, will you still have the authority and the ability to get this information to the American people?
Yeah, I mean, the only difference is that I will be the Republican leader on the committee. The question is that the subpoena power will lay in the hands of the Democrats.
But the Senate would have the power too, as well.
But like I've said, That's true, but we have also, for many months here, Sean, been willing to, we've said that, look, our investigation's over with. The White House is going to be able to declassify a lot of this information to help us out to get to the bottom of this.
All right. Congressman Nunes, you've done great work. So has John Solomon. If so, that basically what I said is true. That is, there is no equal justice, equal application of our laws. That would be shredding, literally shredding, if you're giving false information to a court to obtain a FISA warrant to spy on an American and not even verifying it. Wow. Michelle Malkin debates an immigration activist about the crisis at our southern border. That's next on this Breaking News Night. Also later, a school principal trying to ban candy canes because it has a J shape and it might have to do with Jesus. Steve Doocy, Ainsley Earhart are here in studio to react. Straight ahead.
My team spent.
All right, as the migrant caravan continues to cause chaos on the border, reports are emerging of a migrant woman, a member of the caravan, who entered the U.S. illegally, gave birth to a baby less than 24 hours later. And then ICE released a statement today saying that they have arrested 58 illegal aliens in a 5-day raid in the New England area. According to ICE, among those arrested, 30 had prior felony convictions for serious or violent offenses. 33 have criminal charges pending. 15 were previously released from local law enforcement custody without an active detainer. 9 were referred for criminal prosecution. 1 is being referred to the U.S. Marshals for failure to register as a sex offender. 9 had been previously removed from the United States and returned illegally. 4 had active, Interpol red notices. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi now says that she will not accept a DACA deal in exchange for the wall. I guess they don't want to fix the problem ever, even if you give them what they want. Take a look.
Would you be willing to support some degree of wall funding if you got a permanent, bona fide solution to come back?
No.
Why not?
Well, because they're two different subjects.
All right, here with reaction, we have conservative columnist, our friend Michelle Malkin, and immigration activist Roberto Hernandez. Roberto, you look at all of that, and I understand that a lot of people want to come to America. I just want people to come legally, so we have a chance to vet them, to make sure we pay, on average, according to a recent report, $70,000 per year per illegal immigrant, the American taxpayer. That's healthcare, education, criminal justice system. And, you know, we have Obama authorized $300 million to pay for free legal advice. We have 2 recent cases where innocent people, one in Oregon, one in Texas, were murdered by illegal immigrants. Why can't we just do this all legally?
First of all, when Obama campaigned to be president, he promised that he was going to do immigration reform the first year that he was in office. And Nancy Pelosi was the head of the Speaker of the House for Congress.
Listen, sir, I asked you a very simple question. What do you say to the families? You're not answering my question. What do you say to the families?
No, well, let me tell you.
What do you say to the families? There are 2 families in the last 3 weeks that lost loved ones because of illegal immigration. Why can't we as America have the right to vet people to make sure that they can take care of themselves when they're here and that they don't have any criminal ties or backgrounds? Is that fair?
The Democratic Party failed to do immigration reform.
You're not answering my question.
When Obama was president,
is that fair that we vet people?
What we landed up getting was DACA, a program for
you have no intention of answering my question. What do you say to families? Listen to me. What do you say to families who lost their children because of illegal immigrants coming to this country illegally, violating our sovereignty and our laws, and they end up killing innocent people? That's not the vast majority, but when that happens, what do you say to those parents?
But that's just a few people. We have criminals every day in this country. How many white people are killing people in this country? You know what? You're picking on few incidents. A few incidents. That's what you're doing.
All right, Michelle Malkin.
You're picking on a few incidents.
Michelle.
When you look at this country,
we have another guest. Let him respond.
Who are the majority of the criminals in this country? They're white. We're not talking about them.
This is what open border zealots do.
All right,
they
Michelle.
avoid the They avoid the basic fundamental question and the basic distinction between people who want to come here legally and people who want to come here illegally. Sean, you could have one of these open borders extremists on every single night, and they sound so reasonable. And I actually agree with what he was trying to say there when he was avoiding your question. Yes, Democrats are hypocrites. They talk out of both sides of their mouths on this issue. And I know that people like him and his lobbying groups are very disappointed that they didn't get the wholesale amnesty that they want. The bottom line is that people like Mr. Hernandez, your guest there in San Francisco, which has been absolutely ruined by illegal alien sanctuary policies, and you want him to confront the violent crime that has racked families of all colors in San Francisco, and he won't do it. Instead, he'll talk about the plight of all of these migrants from around the world who want to flood our borders and cause even more chaos, the costs of health care, welfare, education, crime, and the impact on American workers of all colors.
Thank you both. We appreciate it. When we come back, liberal media, if you can believe it, they now stoop to a new low using the memorial service for Bush 41 to once again attack President Trump. Is there any decency? A mini monologue straight ahead. All right, as I have explained again and again, when it comes to trashing President Trump, well, nothing is off limits. And if you thought what we showed you last night was bad, it's getting even worse. And that is the subject of tonight's mini monologue. All right, tonight the media is sinking to new depths, if that's even possible. Clearly it is, as they continue to use the funeral, the life, the legacy of former President George H.W. Bush to attack President Trump. Now, after yesterday's powerful memorial service in Washington, D.C. for the late 41st president, well, your mainstream media still cannot stop using these events to demonize their current enemy, which is President Trump. And it's getting even more ridiculous. They're now going after President Trump over how he prays. I'm not making this up to them. Even standing silently during the Apostles' Creed at a funeral is cause for an attack against him. But it shows how the media is getting more and more unhinged, more hateful, and more divorced from any sense of reality or what their real job's supposed to be. And they wonder why nobody trusts them. And of course, the destroyed Trump media didn't stop there. Rather than focusing on the life, the accomplishments, the sacrifice, the service of the 41st president, well, the coverage looked like this. Take a look.
It was a full state funeral. It was quite a moving sight to see the presidents and the first ladies in the front row waiting to honor President Bush, chatting comfortably with one another until Trump showed up. Then it became silent staring time. Donald Trump is the only person in the world who can bring down a funeral.
Hillary is just staring straight ahead like she's on an elevator with a weirdo. And it was like, it really was something. It's like all of America's divorced parents together in the same room for the first time.
It was extraordinary to see President Trump sitting with the former presidents, paying tribute to a leader whose humility and decency is so different from today's politics.
I don't think you want to give out too many medals for not screwing up a presidential funeral. The president was on best behavior this week, but that's a fairly low bar.
Well, I think in this era of covering white-collar crimes and porn stars and vulgarity, you know, it was nice to look back to someone who was trying to represent decency and civility. And when they were planning his funeral in 2011, he said to an aide, "Do you think anyone will come?" And that modesty is in such contrast to Trump's endless odyssey of narcissistic self-discovery.
Now, if that's not egregious enough, so-called journalists over at ABC News even joked about a future funeral for President Trump. You can't make this up. Take a listen.
Perhaps a recognition in terms of his involvement in the proceedings by President Trump that he someday will be getting a similar treatment when he passes as a former president of the United States.
Probably a different tone in that funeral.
Perhaps.
He's going to choreograph it, so there may be more trumpets and
maybe he was taking cues. Yes, he would do it bigger. One would imagine.
It'd be the best presidential funeral ever. No one will ever have seen anything like that.
And as disturbing as that was, well, no one embarrassed themselves more than fake news CNN. Our friend Don Lemon said something so outrageous that even his colleague had to call him out. Take a look.
I want to say that I don't think I would shake hands with him. I don't know. I would just Nope, couldn't do it. I'm not that big a person. I would hope that I would be, but I don't, I can't fake the funk, as they say. I want to show you something. Let me show you what I would have done. Okay, come here. Come here, Dom. Come here, Dom. Try to shake
poor
my
Don.
hand.
You're petty and small.
I'm not petty and small. That's real, brother. That's real. And
real
it
petty
shows
and
you this
small.
is not.
But it's like I keep telling you, this is all part of a pattern. Demonize, denigrate, delegitimize every second, every minute of every hour of every day President Trump at all costs, even if it means using the passing of an American icon who, by the way, they were pretty mean to when he was alive, President H.W. Bush, to try and score cheap political points and further divide the country. Here with reaction. He is the media reporter from The Hill, Joe Concha, and former Secret Service agent, our friend Dan Bongino. Joe, let me start with you. They say he was a gentleman, and he was. But they didn't say nice things about him when he was alive. Being a gentleman back then, he was a wimp. You know, he was, he was out of touch. He didn't know how to use a scanner, which, by the way, was a fake news story back in the day. And so Reagan, Bush 41, McCain, even, Bush 43 while he was alive, they trashed these men, utterly destroy them. Now they've died. They say nice things to appear, creating a veneer that they're bipartisan. And they're not.
George W. Bush was also called a racist before it was fashionable to call anybody a racist for the Willie Horton ad, if you remember that. Interesting stat, in 1992, 7% of journalists voted for George H.W. Bush, the rest obviously for Bill Clinton. You played some clips there. And Kimmel and Colbert were joking, and they're late-night hosts, so I kind of give them a pass on that. I still think it's classless, given that this was a state funeral held the same day. But ABC News, their senior analyst, a guy like Terry Moran, is making jokes while you're watching the procession of the casket of George H.W. Bush being taken out of a plane. And he's making jokes about President Trump's future funeral. Do these guys have any self-awareness? The answer is none whatsoever. So, Sean, this is why the media is not only mistrusted, but held in contempt by at least half the country. It's not even about mistrust anymore. It's like, I don't like these people. They don't have any class, and they're cheesy. That Don Lemon skit, I'm going to show you how I'm going to blow off Donald Trump by not shaking his hands. What is that? He's called an anchor on that network. He's not even an opinion guy.
Dan, I always said in the Obama years, especially on radio more than television, that it wouldn't be good for me to get an interview with then President Obama, because I respect the office. And I think he's a good father, probably a good guy. He's just a rigid, radical ideologue that governed horribly. It's a hard thing because I respected the office. I wouldn't be able to interrupt him like I can you or Joe. Let's put it that way.
And you do that.
Right.
So, I mean, what did you think of that?
Yeah, Sean, this is, you're right. I served as a Secret Service agent for, years, proudly under Barack Obama, because I believe in the constitutional republic, although I, like yourself, disagree with just about every ideological position he had. But this is what's known as the myth of the good Republican. You probably know what I'm talking about here. When a Republican is powerless or is left the political scene, what the media will do is they will paint their coverage of this Republican as something it wasn't. You were absolutely right. When George H.W. Bush was in office, it was merciless, the media coverage. I was just a young man back then, but I specifically remember it, and it was merciless. And they do it for a reason, Sean. They do it because of this foil effect, right? They want to make the current Republicans appear really bad, right? Why do you put a diamond on a black background? Because it seems shinier. So what they want to do is they do the reverse foil. They want to make these Republicans, especially Donald Trump, seem awful. So they go back and rewrite history about how they covered past Republicans. It's total nonsense. Everybody sees right through it.
All right, I got to roll. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, you're not going to believe it. What we tell you next, liberal lunacy around Christmas at an all-time low. One principal trying to ban candy canes because they are J-shaped when you hold them that way, and they think that means Jesus. Steve Doocy, Ainsley Earhart from Fox and from New York. All right, I'm not that smart. Just saying. I'm not making that claim.
I'm not that smart either. Oh, my God.
All right, Tucker, thank you. All right, welcome to Hannity. Tonight we have major breaking news. The Hill's John Solomon tonight has just uncovered smoking gun new evidence of FISA abuse committed at the highest levels of James Comey's FBI, including a damning email chain. Coming up, we're going to show you the damning new discoveries. Also tonight, the Mueller witch hunt is apparently winding down. The mainstream media is praying hard for the bombshell that they're not getting. And in just moments, we're going to tell you everything you need to know about the special counsel's brand new report on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. They're going back to the 1700s. I'll explain. And an American hero's life was ruined over a process crime. While many top Democrats, they got away scot-free with much worse. Tonight, we'll show you some disgusting remarks from a prominent senator we were just talking about that thinks we, the people, are pretty stupid. And later, we'll bring you the latest chapter in the war on Christmas. Get this, featuring a far-left pastor putting the baby Jesus in a cage to protest President Trump. Unbelievable. And we'll play a powerful tribute to President George Herbert Walker Bush. Stay tuned. We begin with our breaking news opening monologue. All right, little thing about me. I grew up in a house, 50 by 100 lot, surrounded by law enforcement everywhere. My mom was a prison guard for 25 years. My father, he was a family court probation officer. Many cousins were on the New York Police Department. And my two relatives that made it to the FBI, they were considered deity. Not kidding. But tonight, I'm shocked and frankly saddened by what is corruption and abuse of power at the very top of America's most trusted institutions. Now, breaking tonight, the Hill's John Solomon has just dropped yet another bombshell on James Comey's FBI. And according to the Hill and his report, newly unearthed emails show that top DOJ FBI officials that they engaged in a willful and organized effort to defraud a FISA court judge prior to the 2016 election. Now, we've talked about this, but we never had these emails. This all surrounds the FISA warrant application and the subsequent renewal applications of Trump campaign associate Carter Page. Now, according to those newly uncovered emails, we now know the basis for this warrant was the Clinton bought and paid for dirty dossier. Remember, the bulk of evidence. Now, James Comey, along with other top DOJ officials and FBI officials, they knew that the evidence presented in the dossier was shady at best. This is what Solomon has uncovered tonight. The email exchanges show that the FBI were aware before they secured the now infamous warrant that there were intelligence community concerns about the reliability of the main evidence used to support it, that being the Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele Russian dossier. And according to Solomon, the FBI was fully aware that Steele was, quote, had contacts with news media reporters before the FISA warrant was even secured. Now, remember, the FBI attempted to bolster its FISA application. Remember, they used what we call circular reporting, Yahoo News. And by the way, they knew the source was Christopher Steele. So it's all really just one source, but they like to create the impression for the court that there's multiple sources. No, that's circular reporting. So to recap, the FBI under President Obama, they got a warrant to spy on Trump campaign associate Carter Page at the height of the 2016 election. In order to achieve this feat, well, they had presented the FISA court judge with evidence that we now know that the FBI knew was sketchy and knew was not verified. And they themselves had doubts about it ever being true. Now, they knew the evidence was bought and paid for, too, by Hillary Clinton. That was withheld from the FISA court judges. And the evidence was bolstered with the circular media reporting that the FBI knew Christopher Steele was behind. But as we now know, that's not how so-called evidence was presented to the FISA court. So tonight, the smoking gun evidence that the FBI, under James Comey's leadership, committed a complete and total fraud on the FISA courts by presenting the court Hillary's bought and paid Russian dossier as real intelligence, and they hid the fact that the other evidence was nothing more than circular reporting. They knew it all. The email chain shows it all. Now, the evidence shows a serious miscarriage of justice, a serious abuse of power. It should shock every American, especially in light of yesterday's news. And this Friday, James Comey will testify before the House Judiciary Committee. Hopefully, he will be held accountable. Now, we did reach out to the FBI and James Comey for comment. We've yet to receive a response. John Solomon will join us with more on this devastating new report in a minute. But first, we do turn to the mainstream media's obsession of the week, once again featuring Robert Mueller's partisan witch hunt. And thanks to the latest special counsel memo on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, well, many in the press are yet again predicting an end to the Trump presidency. This is going on for 2 years. Hasn't happened yet. Take a look.
I'm going to tell you one thing I take away. There's about a size 16 shoe going to drop here.
My takeaway was that Bob Mueller and his people have a substantial case going here.
Anyone who's in Flynn's orbit, either before the election, during the transition, and those few weeks that Flynn is the national security advisor, is worried.
If you're in Trump land tonight and these documents come down, how do you feel?
I'm wigging out.
The fact that he is saying senior government leaders should be held to the highest standards, I would be a little nervous if I